Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of honor, of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. Come yet again, come. Wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. Ours is no care of despair. Wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. 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 Ours is no care.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Montgomery online worship for May 10, 2020. It's Mother's Day. No matter who you are, what you believe, where you've been, or what has happened in your life, no matter the reason that you find yourself watching this video today, we are so glad that you have joined us. My name is Lynn Hopkins, and it is my honor to serve this congregation as its minister. Let us now hear from our congregation president, Todd Schmidt, as we light our chalice.
Solitude does not necessarily mean living apart from others. Rather, it means living apart from oneself. It is not about the absence of other people. It is about being fully present to ourselves, whether or not we are with others. Community does not necessarily mean living face to face with others. Rather, it means never losing awareness that we are connected to each other. It is not about the presence of other people. It is about being fully open to the reality of relationship, whether or not we are alone.
I invite those who would like to do so to join me in speaking our congregational covenant, which appears on our website and will be shown on the screen as we begin. We, the members and friends of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Montgomery, promise to serve our community with open minds, willing hearts, and helping hands as we respect one another, honoring that our perceptions may differ, value our differences, working to better understand them in conflict, give joyfully of ourselves, being in harmony with our capabilities, and embrace our connections with each other, nature, the global community, and the great mystery of life. Now, let us hear from our religious education coordinator, Roger Burdett, with a time for all ages.
Hey, welcome to Time for All Ages for May 10th. As we've been doing for a while, we're reading Loser by Jerry Spinelli. I'm trying to find the camera. Why fit in when you can stand out? We are reading this book with permission from HarperCollins Children's Books, and Mr. Spinelli himself. So we're going to go all the way through chapter 23 today. We are really getting near the end. I'm going to summarize most of this chapter, and I'm going to read the last bit. I have not read that yet, so I will uncover that with you. All right, in terms of the summary, in chapter 22, he graduated. Donald Zinkoff, our protagonist, he graduated from the 5th grade. Well, now he's in the summer. He has a long, lazy summer. He rides his bicycle with a new kid up the street. He goes Monopoly crazy, plays with everybody he can. He plays with his sister Polly, beats her badly, but she doesn't know because she's young and she just likes to roll the dice. He goes to middle school. He is now at Monroe Middle School, and it's huge. 4 schools feed into this one middle school. There are no swings. There is no playground. There is no recess. 8th graders knock him over. He sees one of his old friends, Andrew. Andrew used to be his neighbor. He's a banker's son. And then they moved away and he lost track. Well, here's Andrew. Andrew is now 5 inches taller than Donald Zinkoff. And he informs Donald that my name is Drew. And so Donald said, so is your dad still a banker? And Drew says, is your dad still a mailman? And then he walks off. All right, so Andrew's gone. Donald Zinkoff joins the band. He joins clubs. He gets himself very involved. He once stumbles on the stairs, and 8th graders walk over his cookies that he spilled out of his bag. He can't handle geometry, so they send him back to regular math. Band is now marching band. He can play. He can march. He can't do both things together. He bumps into the tuba player and gets a bloody nose. And people tell him to go home, but he does not give up. There are basketball goals on the campus too, and everybody stands around, or a lot of people, and they want to play basketball, but they have to get picked. And Donald tries to look tough, and he tries to look like, yeah, man, I can play some basketball, but they never pick him. And after that sad summary, that gets us to the end of chapter 23. So September becomes October. October becomes November. December, and the grass turns to hairbrushes, and the bus riders fog the windows with their breath. The band comes inside, and the pickup players come in, and the football teams. The pickup players is a reference to the basketball players who want to play pickup games. Halloween, Thanksgiving, basketball, tests, assignments, projects, report cards, cheers, groans, waiting for snow, the school in winter. And Zinkoff vanishes. Not to himself, of course. To himself, he is very much there every minute, laughing and burping and biting his pencil eraser. Like everybody else, he's the star of his own life. He is seen and heard almost every day by the other band members and by his 6th grade friends. But to the great dragonfly's eye of Monroe Middle School, he is unseen. Even the thing that got him noticed at Satterfield Elementary, the losing, even that's gone. All of that is forgotten, left behind like candy wrappers. Zinkoff is not a loser here. He is less than a loser. He's nobody. And long before the first snowfall, he sinks into nobodiness. I would like to remind you that the title of this book is Loser, Why Fit In When You Can Stand Out. So even though that was a very bleak ending of that chapter, I am standing strong and believing that our author, Jerry Spinelli, is going to take us to a nice, strong finish, and we are getting very, very close. Next time, our chapter is called Snow. Chapter 24, Snow. I hope you have a great week.
For the last few years, we have held our annual Flower Communion on Mother's Day. The Flower Communion is a long-standing part of the Unitarian Universalist practice and tradition. This year, clearly, that was not an option. But Unitarians in particular have deep ties to the origins of Mother's Day. The Mother's Day Proclamation, written by Julia Ward Howe, is read here by fellow Unitarian Universalists.
Arise, all women who have hearts.
Whether your baptism be that of water or of tears.
Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies.
Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause.
Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience.
We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country,
to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs.
From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own.
It says, disarm.
Disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice.
Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession.
As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war.
Let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council.
Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead.
Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace.
Each learning after their own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God.
In the name of womanhood and of humanity,
I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality
may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects.
To promote the alliance of the different nationalities.
The amicable settlements of international questions.
The great and general interest of peace.
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 Yes, that's the same Julia Ward Howe who wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic, prominent Unitarian suffragist, abolitionist, activist for social justice, as well as an accomplished poet and essayist and a frequent speaker at Unitarian and Universalist congregations. Thanks to our friends in East Brunswick, New Jersey, for sharing that recording with us. We always take a moment during our service to mark the joys and sorrows that we carry with us during the week. We take a moment to ritually lift them up and release them in a form of congregational, communal prayer. I invite you to type whatever is on your mind this morning so that those who are here with us are able to know and embrace and carry the things that are on your mind and heart. It is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and our nation is in a mental health crisis on many levels. Now, with this pandemic raging, I know that all of us experience it in different ways, and for some folks, it's not a big deal. There are people who sit and watch the news programs with curiosity and intellectual interest. There are those who see some good and some bad in this staying at home and staying apart. Those who are able to enjoy the benefits and weather the difficulties. There are those, too, for whom this is a real headache, but not a serious hardship. Now, if that's you, I'm not talking to you today. I hope you'll stick with us because, well, maybe you'll get something out of it. At the very least, maybe you will come to learn something that will help you understand next time you run into one of the rest of us. I'm talking to people like me. That's really all I'm equipped for anyway. Anything else would be dishonest. And to tell you the truth, I do not have the energy for masquerade right now. Our nation is in mental health crisis. There is a persistent sense of trauma that is disorienting, disruptive. It's terrifying. And I don't mean the virus. It's terrifying, this feeling. Our current state is so awfully uncomfortable that large numbers of people have become willing to go to almost any length to make it go away. There's a virus out there, this thing that seems to creep up invisibly and not make its presence known for a week or two, if ever, as we carry it around to all of those we know and love. We may never even know we've done so, and some of those people, the ones we love, may suffer greatly. Some could even die, and we don't even know we're doing it. So, yeah, there's a lot in this virus to be afraid of. But at this point, if you look around to how people are acting and reacting, we seem to be not so much responding to the virus itself, but how it makes us feel. I mean, what else could explain so many people protesting in the streets or calling talk radio or writing letters to the editor or posting on social media saying, let's go back. Let's go back to work and to the stores and to the restaurants, even as the numbers in Alabama are rising ever faster. Sure, the bug is scary. But what's really terrifying is we don't know what to do about it. Feelings we don't understand. Confused, disturbed, overwhelmed, when it doesn't really make sense that we should. I mean, not afraid of getting sick. I know I'm protected by my isolation. Don't know anybody who is sick right now. I'm not fearful of an outcome. I don't stand in any immediate threat of losing my job. There's nothing for me personally to fear. But this feeling, it feels bad. Make it stop. let's just say it's over so that we don't have to feel this way anymore. Yeah, there's dozens of people in Alabama, hundreds, maybe thousands across the country, even willing to hit the streets to lobby and protest. Not everyone, not even most people, have reached that level of irrational behavior. Most of us just look and think, what is wrong with them? Don't they understand how serious this is? Yeah, but they experience the pain differently. Most of us make a more reasoned response to a public health threat. Most of us are able to assess what it is that is threatening and respond in a way that won't make matters worse. But that doesn't mean we've got it all together. Especially those of us who are always the ones who have it all together. Yeah, you know who you are, so do I. Most of you I know. The ones that people turn to for comfort. The ones who can be counted on to be a sounding board or a voice of reason. The ones who sit up with people when they're sick and help take care of things when people are grieving. The ones who show up with a wrench or jumper cables or a blanket or whatever the emergency calls for. Yeah. You say you have a support system when someone asks. Sure, I have a network. And sure, yeah, there are people you could call if you ever really needed to, but you never need to. You're fine, right? I know. On April 28th, Columbia University Irving Medical Center emergency physician Lorna Breen ended her own life. She was 49 years old, the child of a retired trauma surgeon. She had contracted the virus, taken a couple of weeks off to recover, gotten healthy again, but never returned fully. She went from working the 18-hour shifts and sleeping in the hallways with her colleagues before she got sick. When she came back, she could barely make it through 12 hours. And her spirit was broken. Lee Goldman, Dean of the Faculties of Health Science and Medicine at Columbia University Irving Medical Center, wrote a memo to the doctors there, said in part, "What many of you do every day is truly heroic, but please remember that even heroes are not invulnerable. And asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of self-awareness. The loss of Dr. Breen should reinforce our collective appreciation for each other, our recognition of the emotional as well as physical toll of this crisis, and the need to take care of ourselves and one another." Here's another story. Not a prominent ER doctor on the front lines, but a semi-retired UU minister colleague stuck at home like most of us are. She's in Minnesota. One day, without any signs or symptoms ahead of time, she suddenly felt really strange. And before she even had enough time to fully assess what about the feeling was strange exactly, she was out on the kitchen floor unconscious. She fainted for the first time ever in her life. Now, I'll spare you the suspense. She's okay. She wasn't sick. As far as the doctors could tell, hospital tests showed nothing. She went home. She concluded that she probably was dehydrated. But here's what she wrote in response. The voice that says, "I'm fine," and really means, "leave me alone," is occurring to me as a voice of stupidity that I should challenge at every turn. I'm not fine. We're not fine. None of us are fine right now, and pretty much we never were. Privilege makes some of us definitely way more fine than others, but none of us are fine in a world where marginalized people's lives are deemed less important than a robust economy for the privileged, with the government coldly calculating whose deaths are acceptable and whose lives matter enough to protect. None of us was fine before the coronavirus, and certainly none of us are fine now. None of us are fine in a world of cruelty, violence, indifference, greed. Admitting the mess we are all in, and that none of us can power through it alone, invites us to compassionately look around and see who else isn't fine, to recognize that we are not little atoms separate from the rest of the world. I'm not fine, but I'm in a lot better situation than many other people. People without food or rent, without safety or care, people without health care and time to heal. Knowing that none of us are fine, but some of us are more fine than others, leads me to ask, so how do I share what I have the best I can? How do I help us all to be fine as we can be? That question is better answered when my first impulse isn't to maintain my little bubble of isolated well-being. In a world where interdependence has never been more obvious, when we're all fine, I'm fine. Until then, the evidence is right there, as obvious as a body lying on a kitchen floor. None of us are fine. We're not fine at all. That was the Reverend Meg Riley of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. She has been the CLF senior minister for many years and offers weekly wisdom. I encourage you to subscribe if you don't already. Here's another clergy. This is an ordained Baptist pastor from East Tennessee, but he's more than that. He's also a psychotherapist who was reflecting on the death of Dr. Breen. Dr. Eric Minton wrote under the title, "Individual Heroism Won't Save Us." That caught my attention. Individual heroism won't save us. And he opens by talking about Dr. Breen. And he says, as a psychotherapist writing to you during Mental Health Awareness Month, I have to say at present I'm exhausted, physically, personally, spiritually, but especially professionally. In a moment where medical professionals like Breen, chaplains, grocery clerks, mail carriers, delivery personnel risk life and limb each day to keep our country afloat, it would seem a fundamental misreading of the room to admit personal defeat in the face of what seems more and more like months of teletherapy from the comfort of my own home. I guess I finally realized that there are only so many ways to ask, and how would you say this seemingly unending global apocalypse really feels for you today? It's hard to blame someone's emotionally stunted parents for that one. However, brave or not, here we are, or rather, here I am, admitting my lack of heroism all the same. For the first time in my career, I can feel my lack of okayness leaking out of me. That's Dr. Eric Minton. I feel my lack of okayness leaking out of me. He has a lot more to say here. Breen's Life and Death, if we allow it, teaches us that individual heroism in the face of a leadership vacuum will always be co-opted, branded, cynically celebrated, and eventually used up and forgotten, because it allows those who benefit from doing nothing to keep doing nothing. My fatigue, your fatigue, my anxiety, your anxiety, our collective pain isn't a failure of our heroism, of how we can't take it anymore, but is rather a reminder that we shouldn't have to be heroes to survive in this country. The pain is our body's quiet acknowledgement that we were owed something better from those in charge. And every time they forward this responsibility to us as private citizens, pastors of churches, owners of business, and then we claim it as our own, it can and will only produce chaos, fear, and this overwhelming sense that we will never be enough to fix it.
My hands are strong enough, they're strong enough, and I'm good enough. My hands are strong enough to give love. I know that my arms are long enough, they're long enough, and I'm good enough. My arms are long enough to give love. I know that my heart is wide enough, it's wide enough, I'm good enough. My heart is wide enough to give love. I know that my light is bright enough, it's bright enough, I'm good enough. My light is bright enough to give love. And my heart is wide enough to give love. I know that my arms are long enough to give love. My hands are strong enough to give love. 1, 2, 3.
He closes thus. In this kind of moment, the most important thing we can do is care for ourselves the way we always wanted to be cared for by those who came before us. Because when we patiently empathize with, rather than shame, the depression and anxiety and overwhelm leaking out of us right now, we may discover some of the things these feelings are noticing about our world aren't wrong. They just don't have answers we can provide at the moment. And when we come to this, the edge of our responsibility and understanding as individual citizens, no matter how well educated or experienced we may be, it is time to finally reject the temptation to be heroic and keep going, and to instead curl up with something or someone that reminds us we aren't alone to fix or save the world. Dr. Eric Minton, writing in Sojourners. I want to digress for just a moment to Mother's Day. The reason will be obvious. I've talked before about mothers as being those who have given us life at moments in our history when we most needed it. They may be of no biological relation. Our own biological family experience may be good or extremely bad. It matters not. All of us have mothers in our past and present. And if you're listening to these words today, I know that you have mothers too. Otherwise, you could not have made it so far. It's Mother's Day. Call your mother. Especially if you are one who never needs anybody to be there for them. You're the one who's always there for others. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and say, "Hey, old friend, haven't talked in a while. We were talking this morning about gratitude and how so often we feel thankful for someone and never take the time to let them know. So I just wanted to make contact with you and make sure you know how thankful I am for you because of how they are, of something they've done, of whatever." There's your opening. Let them know. Let them hear. It's Mother's Day. Call your mother. We're going to have another song now, and then we'll put out the chalice. But I hope you'll come over to Zoom and join us for the second hour conversation. The address will be on the screen. The link is on our website, uumontgomery.org, if you miss it here. Come over, hang out. If you don't want to turn the video on, that's fine. We'd love to have you anyway. You don't have to say anything. But we sure would like it if you would join us in our discussion after the service starts at 11.
Love is but a song we sing, and fear's the way we die. Now you can make the mountains ring and make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the way, and you may not know why. Come on, people now, smile with your brother, everybody get together and try to love one another right now. I know that you can.
Our service has ended. May our service begin.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.